Today we're going to learn about the Korean War. Now the Korean War is a war of containment, and we're going to talk about why the Korean War is called a war of containment. Now I have a map here of Korea, and this is what I want you to kind of look at as we talk about this, and it's fairly short and simple. Okay, now we know a little bit of history about Korea. We know that after, as part of the whole imperialism thing, that Japan had taken over Korea. They had taken over not just North Korea, but the whole Korea. So if this is China, this was Korea, was actually part of China at one point, and then the Japanese take it from China. Okay, that was their first stint into imperialism. We know that the Russians, here's USSR, at the time they were Russia, tried to fight and take all of Korea from Japan at one point, and they lost. Okay, this was right before World War I that went on, and so for quite a while then, Japan had occupied Korea, and they were pretty brutal occupants. They weren't nice to the Korean people, and they just, they were there to imperialize and take resources and such. And so it was a pretty brutal occupation, and Korea really had never been independent. Okay, so that's something to kind of think about when we talk about the Korean War as well. Okay, so here's the deal. After World War II, of course, Japan loses to the United States and the Soviet Union. And so we decide to split Korea up. This line here is called the 38th parallel. And this was drawn and basically divides Korea up between the Russian-supported or Soviet-supported North Korea and American-supported South Korea. Okay, and so we come in and we set up a democracy here. They have an election, and we help them get established as a country, and as we are occupying South Korea, and that's what we do. Okay, happy democracy to you. Welcome to the world of, spreading democracy. And so these they are set up with that government. Meanwhile, in the North, the Soviets, while they don't directly occupy North Korea, they set up a government that is very friendly to them. There's a revolutionary named Kim Il-sung, which is the first Kim Il of North Korea. Now we know there's been 3 leaders so far. We have Kim Il-sung, and then Kim Il-jung, and then Un, who is in charge of North Korea now. Okay, or he may be dead. We don't know. But is what we learned on the first day of school. This is a dynastic handoff communism type of situation. So they are supported by the Soviets. That's why they're communist. Okay, and so they have lots of guns and weapons and support. We also know from our little project that we did the other day that China is now communist. So their neighbors to the north of them are communist as well, and Soviet supported through Mao. Okay, so Mao's up here in China, he's communist. The USSR sends in weapons and all this good stuff. And then South Korea is down here, pretty vulnerable, but supported by the United States. Okay, and they are democratic. And again, this 38th parallel is what divides them. We feel like South Korea is pretty set up as a government. So we send in, we give them weapons support in this new government, and we say, have a great democracy, South Korea, see you later. So then we leave South Korea, go back home. As soon as the United States pulls out of South Korea, the North decides to invade, and their intention is to take all of Korea under them. Now, if you remember what containment is about stopping the spread of communism, not get rid of communism that already exists. So we know that communism already exists here, and so we have South Korea down here, which is pretty vulnerable. So as soon as we leave South Korea, here come the troops from North Korea to invade. So that means we then have to go in and save South Korea, because again, we're not trying to get rid of communism here. We knew it was already here. That's not containment. but we do need to try to stop it from spreading. So we come back in to fight this war to make sure that the communists get pushed up over this little 38th parallel line that divides North and South Korea. And that's our goal, okay? Again, not to eradicate communism in all of Korea, but to make sure that it is not in South Korea. All right, now, the commander and leader of the U.S. troops is a name that should sound familiar. His name is Douglas MacArthur, and if you remember, he was the one that was in charge of the troops of Japan. Now, when he won Japan, or when he won World War II in Japan, he was a pretty big hero, okay? And he was known as one of the greatest military commanders of all time. So here comes MacArthur. He comes in with his troops, and they do a tremendous job. One of the things that they do is something called an amphibious landing, which means they kind of use the sea and they leapfrog all the way up here to North Korea, up here near the border of China. Okay, now Truman is president, and he tells MacArthur, make sure that you don't involve the Chinese in this, okay? So MacArthur's feeling great because he has taken all this area and he's landed himself way up here. And, he's thinking, hey, maybe we could get all of North Korea and get rid of communism here. That would be super awesome since we did this so quickly. Maybe we can do this. And Truman's like, nope, just keep them up here, push them up here. Do not poke around China. Do not try to involve China. And sure enough, MacArthur starts poking around China. And as soon as he does that, these Chinese communist forces decide that they're going to come in and support North Korea. So, now the Chinese are involved. And everyone's pretty mad, especially Truman is mad at MacArthur for involving the Chinese when he told him clearly not to involve the Chinese. So now we have to fight the communists from China as well as some Soviet-supported troops and the North Koreans. And so they actually push us way back down into here, down here, and now we have lost ground, not gained ground. Okay, so MacArthur is fired, okay, and Truman replaces him with a Commander Ridgway. Ridgway is able to push us back, or push the North Koreans back up over the 38th parallel. And it's at that point that Truman says, okay, that's it. We're done. We're not doing any more. We came what we came to do. And that is to push the North Koreans back up over the 38th parallel. Now, this was not truly a war because we never declared war in Congress. In fact, we not declared war in the United States since World War II. So this was what we call a Korean conflict, truly, instead of a Korean war. So we have what we refer to as a ceasefire, which simply means we've agreed not to fight anymore. Okay, so it wasn't an official end of the war, it wasn't an official treaty, but it was a ceasefire. And in that agreement, we agree that this 38th parallel should remain, okay? That this 38th parallel shouldn't go anywhere. And that is going to continue to divide North Korea and South Korea. And it does today, okay? This is that border. When we watched that movie on the first day of school, we sat there and we watched them, and they literally stand at this border from both sides. We have the North Koreans and the South Koreans, and they stand there and they look at each other across this border. Okay, now they talked in that film we watched how they have dug tunnels under there, and then the South Koreans discovered those tunnels and they've blocked them. But this is something that, they hate each other. They stand at that border and threaten each other pretty much every single day, stare at each other. So this is what divides North and South Korea, and here we are in 2020, and they're still standing there today 24/7 with different shifts of soldiers staring at each other, and that hasn't changed, okay, since 1950. So a long time we've just been sitting there in this country staring at each other. Now, we would say this is a successful war of containment because, again, we didn't come to eradicate communism here. We just came to make sure it didn't leak into South Korea, which we were successful in doing, okay? So we didn't get rid of communism up here. This was a major leak in our containment, and this became communist. This becomes communist, North Korea. and North Korea becomes communist, and then South Korea remains democratic even today. Okay, so this is what divides and continues today. All right, but it is a war of containment, and it was a successful war of containment because we were able to stop that spread of communism. Okay, so again, we call this a Cold War because we never fought the Soviets directly. Okay, we fought these little proxy wars instead, where the Soviets would support troops and support communists like they did in China, like they did in North Korea, and we would fight them, but we never fought the Soviets directly. Vietnam War is also a war of containment, okay, because communism was spreading in Vietnam. Okay, supported by the Soviets, supported by them, and we support the French by sending in troops to try to stop the spread of communism in Vietnam. Didn't work there so well, okay? Well, we were able to stop it in Korea, in South Korea at least. We were not able to stop the spread of communism in Vietnam, okay? And we'll talk about that coming up shortly. All right, you guys have a good day. I hope that you are doing well and staying safe, and I miss you guys.